Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. The Phil's offense was abysmal last night in San Francisco, and Phil Cuzzi behind the plate might have been worse. We'll talk about all of it on today's episode.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over 97.5 The Fanatic doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons, and this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing if you're checking us out in podcast form. You can get Locked On Phillies wherever you get your podcasts, and you can check us out on YouTube as well. And if you're doing that, hit that subscribe button. We're coming up on 5,000 subscribers to Locked On Phillies. So thank you to everyone who's done that. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's super free and easy to subscribe, so I would appreciate it. It really helps us out here on Locked On Phillies. So thank you to everyone who has done that and everyone who's going to. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Check out our friends over at FanDuel. So I promise we'll do All-Star snubs, and we'll do that in a little bit and talk about the Phillies that did not make the roster for Atlanta coming up next Wednesday. We're also going to look ahead to Game 2 of the series against the Giants that the Phillies will have tonight. But Game 1 did not go well for the Titans last night. Well, it went well for Cristopher Sanchez. We'll talk more about that in the All-Star snubs portion of the episode today. But where this conversation starts is with the Phillies offense. We will talk about the umpire. We will talk about the lack of reaction to the umpire. But the most important thing, right, the reason the Phillies lost this game is because they were able to score one run, and that one run they probably didn't even really deserve to score. Bryson Stott scored it, and the way he got on base was he hit a ball that seemed to be just a rollover to the first baseman, and it ended up having this weird kick and ended up going through the wickets, Bill Buckner style over there. He ends up getting to second base. Then the ground ball to the right side moves him up to third base, and he scores not on a hit, not a sac fly or anything like that. No, on a wild pitch. So gifted that run, basically, in my opinion. And if it wasn't for that, they would have been shut out by the San Francisco Giants. And the Phillies offense is 0 for their last 20-something with runners in scoring position. You know what's remarkable? It's been 3 straight games since they've had a hit with runners in scoring position. They're 2-1 in those 3 games. So it's just I have no idea how they've even won the 2 games that they've won, all things considered. But you can't survive like that. You can't win consistently like that. This little new nuance of baseball, right? I think it's just coming to light now is you have to hit with runners in scoring position if you want to win games and score enough runs to win games. It's not rocket science, folks. And that's why the Phillies offense is struggling. Now, did they put together good at-bats yesterday? I didn't think they were terrible throughout the game, but it's just they have not come up with big hits over the past 3 contests. And we'll see if they do it tonight, but it'll be tough with All-Star Robbie Ray on the mound for the San Francisco Giants. And the offense is the number one reason why the Philadelphia Phillies lost last night's ball game. Cristopher Sanchez did enough. I know Ryan Kerkering didn't have his best outing, but we'll talk about the umpire in a second that contributed to that. You're not getting clutch hits right now from really anybody. And we've seen this team go through the stretch before. They will come out of it. But these continued lapses back into this type of baseball, some people will say, oh, it's just baseball. And partially I believe that. Some people will say that's showcasing the deficiencies of this team. You can jump on whatever side of that argument you want. I lean more towards it's kind of just the pace of 162 and it's going to happen. But I understand why people feel the way that they do about this offense and think that they need to add a bunch more at the trade deadline. And I'm not going to argue against that, right? But what I will say is, bottom line, the offense is not producing the way they need to win enough ball games to do anything in the postseason. And it's not October, it's July. But still, this is a bad offensive effort from the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, what didn't help is they got a bad effort from behind the dish. Phil Cuzzi was the home plate umpire last night out there in San Fran. And the Phillies have had him a couple times this year. He's been around forever. Now, I believe I saw he was like 69 years old is the age that he's at. And I don't know. I'm not trying to be ageist or anything, but maybe the eyes have gone because he missed some abysmally bad calls last night behind the dish. First off, Bryce Harper got rung up on a pitch out of the strike zone. Saw multiple pitches clearly out of the strike zone that were called strikes. And that happened to a couple Giants hitters as well, but not as egregiously as Bryce Harper saw them. And then in the 8th inning, Orion Kirkring hits the first batter of the inning. The next batter, he gets to 0-2. Right? You're one pitch away from getting your first out, setting up a double play, potentially getting out of the inning. And instead, in an 0-2 count, he throws strike 3 once, not called. Strike 3 twice, not called. Strike 3 3 times, not called. And then with a 3-2 count, gives up a single. And it's just like, oh my God, what are we doing back there? And they weren't middle pitches, but they were all right there. And Cuzzi had been giving room off the plate, a bit of an expanded zone throughout the game. But apparently just all of a sudden squeezed Orion Kirkring in a huge spot that led to him getting into a tough position. And he ends up giving up 2 runs, and the Phillies end up losing the ball game 3-1. Now, did the Phillies have a chance in the 9th inning still to score and extend the game? Absolutely. Is the Phillies offense more to blame than the umpire for the loss last night? 100%. But I'm not going to sit here and I've seen what I saw last night from the home plate umpire and pretend like that didn't affect things. No, he had an adverse effect on the Phillies' chances to win that game. And that's ridiculous. That is why I cannot wait for the challenge system, for the ABS to come to Major League Baseball, because there need to be checks and balances for this. Right now, the only checks and balances you have are arguing with the umpire, and that normally results in an ejection. And sometimes those ejections are warranted, right? You see a guy miss 3 bad calls in a row. Strike, strike, strike. All of those should have been strikeouts. And instead, it ends up with a runner on first base. And the dugout was chirping at Cuzzi, but nobody comes out of the dugout. Nobody goes far enough to get an ejection. Nobody goes out and fights. And that bothered me last night. If you've listened to this podcast, you know that I'm not a big, Rob Thompson doesn't show enough energy. Rob Thompson doesn't show enough fight guy. That's not the way that I look at it, right? Some people are quick to pull that trigger and say, well, Thompson doesn't show enough. Yeah, he looks like he's disinterested or something like that. I don't believe that to be the case. But there are certain times when calls are so egregiously bad that you need to go out and get run. And I thought last night was a time where Rob Thompson or somebody from the Phillies dugout should have gotten run. Like, if you're not going to go out and argue to the point of being ejected from the game on that, what are you going to? Now, Topper's been ejected once this year, and I'm not saying, like, I'm not trying to keep track of his stats of like, oh, he needs to get his ejections up. Like, no, if there's not something to argue, you don't need to argue. But last night there was something to argue, and Bryce Harper was victim to it, and Orion Kirkring was victim to it. And I don't know if they're going to like feel some type of way because their manager didn't come out and defend him. I don't want to take it that far. But from my personal perspective, I'm sitting here on my couch watching the game, half asleep because I got to be up at 4 a.m. So these West Coast games are tough for me. So I'm already a little bit annoyed. And I see that happen. And I stand up in my empty apartment. And I go, what in the world are you watching, dude? Like, they were so bad. I would have gotten tossed if I was in that dugout, and I would have felt fine about it, because the calls were that bad. You got to have a feel for when a line is crossed with how the game is being umpired. And last night, I think a line was crossed. And Rob Thompson didn't come out of the dugout. And nobody got thrown out of the game from the Phillies side. And that disappointed me a little bit. I don't know. Why not? Maybe they felt like it wasn't worth it. I don't know. But that was an instance where I would have wanted to see someone get run. And if you're a Phillies fan that does feel some type of way, like, hey, they didn't do enough to argue their case last night, I'm with you. Like, I brought up an analogy on air over on the radio this morning. And I was saying, like, we've all played, like, basketball in our life, right? And sometimes basketball is a big-time trash talk sport. I love it. I'll give it back and forth. Let's go. But could you imagine you're just out on the court and there's some dude in a pickup game. It's just like, you're trash. You stink every time down the floor. First couple of times, you might just be like, all right, bro. Or just not listen to him or not say anything back. But if he keeps it up the whole game, and he keeps escalating it, and just won't stop pestering you. At some point, you got to stand up for yourself and say something back. Like, yo, knock it off. Not the words that I would necessarily use if I was out there, but we're keeping this podcast family friendly. You get the point, though. When you're pushed to a certain limit, there has to be a limit. And if that's not the limit, what is the limit? If Phil Cuzzi's job last night behind home plate was not enough to get Rob Thompson to get up out of his dugout and walk over there and go nose to nose with him and tell him that he is screwing his team over, I don't know what is. And I don't want to treat this as like, well, Rob Thompson needs to be fired or Rob Thompson doesn't care. But in that instance, I think that was a bad look to not have somebody tossed from that game in that circumstance. Like Kyle Schwarber level Angel Hernandez tossed. And listen, that was Kyle Schwarber taking it into his own hands as the hitter. A hitter could have done it too. So it's not just a Rob Thompson conversation, but ultimately the directive comes from the manager in those type of circumstances. I would have liked to see him show more fight, but I would have liked to see the offense show more fight too. So we were never in that situation, and they did not. So a rough first game out there in San Francisco against the Giants. You can still win the series. You win the next two games. The Phillies have won the last three straight, so it's not like season is over type of stuff. But that was annoying, and I didn't like the way the Phils handled the adversity of the umpire not calling strikes. Not that they were like blaming him after the game, though they did. Like Bryce Harper did bring up, like, yo, he's got to be better. But he led off that same soundbite by saying the offense has to be better. So that's the hierarchy, right? Offense way up here has to be better, top of the totem pole. Then you drop down a couple slots, and it is Phil Cuzzi. But the umpire should never be anywhere on the totem pole. You're supposed to police the game. And Cuzzi did not do a good job last night. But the Phillies offense was arguably worse and has been for a couple of games now. So we'll talk later on in the episode when we preview game 2 about how the Phillies can bounce back. I don't know if tonight's the right setting for it, considering who they're facing. But one guy that did battle last night was Cristopher Sanchez. He got into trouble in the second inning. I thought he might be in for a short night. And he ends up going 7 innings. But even though it was an All-Star performance, he didn't get the All-Star nod this year. We'll talk about that and other All-Star snubs for the Phillies that we haven't gotten a chance to really discuss on the podcast as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. I mean, it's super easy to use, fast to pay out, and makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether I'm placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. Now, you got a lefty on the mound tonight for San Fran. So look at some righties for the Phils. I'm thinking a guy that might be able to show something off if Edmundo Sosa plays, maybe take his over in hits. And also, maybe take the over in runs with Taijuan Walker on the mound for the Titans. Either way, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. So open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. Let's talk about All-Star snubs because the Phillies, they had some big ones. Kyle Schwarber, Zach Wheeler, the two representatives at this moment for the Phillies in the All-Star game down in Atlanta next week. And both of those guys are very deserving, right? Like Kyle Schwarber with his home run total and being in the DH spot, that kind of being the focal point of the DH spot, he deserves to be there. Zach Wheeler deserves to start the All-Star game. And if you want to hear more on my argument about why, you can listen to yesterday's episode. We did a whole segment on Zach Wheeler and his incredible, near-perfect performance on Sunday. But there are a couple of guys that I thought were deserving that did not make it. The biggest snubs being Cristopher Sanchez, who threw yesterday, and Trey Turner. Now, let's start with Sanchez because I didn't really talk about him from last night's game. He battled, man. He did not have his best stuff at all. He didn't really have the strikeout stuff working. And in the second inning, he loads the bases with no outs and gets out of it only allowing one run. But his pitch count clearly got elevated from having that much of a struggle in the second inning. And I was just like, okay, well, this feels like it's going to be a long first game of the series for the Fighting Phils. And then next thing you know, you look up and it's like, oh, did he just complete 7 innings? Did he just end up giving them their 50th quality start of the year from Philly starters? That leads Major League Baseball, by the way. Yeah, he did. He got into a tough spot in 1 inning. He made the adjustment. He goes out. He battles. I wonder how much he talks to Zach Wheeler about adjusting in game, because Wheels is incredible at that. And we know that these guys all lean on each other. But Cristopher Sanchez went out there and took what could have been a blow-up performance and made it into another gem. 7 innings, 1 earned. You will take that every single darn time. Doesn't matter how you get there. Just matters that you do. And he has all-star numbers. He deserves to be there for the All-Star game and be one of the starting pitchers. But he was snubbed. And what bothers me the most about that is one of the spots on the roster is being taken up by Clayton Kershaw, who is this like legacy selection, this honoring of an illustrious career spot. Why are we doing this, folks? Do we want the best players in the All-Star game or not? Like, if you want that, you know what it should be? Clayton Kershaw, you're the bench coach. You throw out the ceremonial first pitch. Like, what are we doing? Next thing we know, we're going to have like 40-year-old former superstars out there that are taking care of business and taking care of spots that should go to other guys that deserve it more. Like, I want the best players. I don't need someone to show me Clayton Kershaw in Atlanta to remind me he's had a great career. I know that. We just saw him get his 3,000th career strikeout. That's not an anti-Kershaw thing. It's an anti-slot that MLB has created for these illustrious career acknowledgments. That should be Cristopher Sanchez's spot. But the Dodgers need another guy in the All-Star game. Done. Now, Trey Turner is a weird one, too. While I don't have really an issue with Francisco Lindor at shortstop or Ellie De La Cruz at shortstop, like I think both those guys have had strong years, Trey Turner, going into yesterday, not only leads the National League in hits, led it by 9. It's not like he was like 2 up on somebody. Like, no, he is clearly the best contact hitter in the National League this year. Leading the National League in hits, and he doesn't get an All-Star nod as a starter or a reserve guy. Like, that will just show you the price of the base hit has gone down so much in baseball. Like, it does not matter anymore to the narrative that's building around the sport. And I'm a home run guy, all right? I don't like singles. Nobody likes singles, right? Singles aren't sexy. But when a guy is leading the National League in hits at the All-Star break or like at the All-Star voting time, how in the world can you justify that guy not being out there? He's shown a little bit of pop. He hasn't played the world's best defense, but a couple of the shortstops on the team have not either. And the other thing, for anyone who's using Trey Turner's defense as a reason to keep him out of the All-Star game, do you think anybody is watching this All-Star game to see defense? Ooh, he's really good fundamentally. No, you're looking to see the stars of the game. You're looking to see cool stuff happen. You're looking to see great hitters against great pitchers. And it's also supposed to be an acknowledgement of accomplishment. And leading the NL in hits is about as clean of an accomplishment as you can get for a non-power hitter. And yet he's not on the team. Now, maybe Sanchez or Turner will be inserted as a replacement for somebody who opts out, for an injured player. I don't know. Weird stuff happens all the time. We saw that last year. A couple guys get added like late, like a day before the game. So you never know. But I think both those guys should be there. I think they're major snubs for the upcoming All-Star game. Ranger Suarez, less so. Because Ranger Suarez, there is a legitimate argument against it. And that's that he doesn't have as many innings as the normal starter because he missed like a month of the season. He's got a 2 even ERA, so we know that he's good enough. And I thought there might be an outside chance that he gets the nod based on the way that he's thrown. But nope, he does not get it either. I'm just not as upset about Ranger Suarez not getting it because, well, you look at it and say, okay, he doesn't have the sample size that these other dudes have. You can make that argument. To me, you can't make an argument against Cristopher Sanchez being an All-Star, and you can't make an argument against Trey Turner being an All-Star. I thought Trey was a lock to make it, and he's snubbed. I don't know if it's anti-Philly. I don't know if it's anti-Trey. I don't know what it is, but I want it fixed. No, I don't think it's anti-Philly because the one thing that I will say at the end of this conversation about the All-Star snubs, they happen every year. There are just so many good players in baseball that it's hard to narrow it down. And with fan voting, it takes up some of these spots with guys that are just more likable than they are good. Not that I think there's anybody on these All-Star rosters that isn't good, right? There's no All-Star starters that's like, that guy doesn't deserve to be there. But the fan voting is inherently biased because you are a fan of your team. So you're going to vote for your players. And I don't know. There are snubs every year. So it's not anything personal against Trey or against Sanchez or against Suarez. Like, that's just not how I view it. I just see them as deserving, and I'm upset they didn't get the nod. And you should be as well, Phillies fans, because, man, we should want to see our guys represented at the All-Star game. But maybe they're just saving up all the Phillies nominations for next year when the All-Star game is here in Philadelphia. I just want to give my 2 cents on that because I thought it was disrespectful to Trey and Cristopher Sanchez that they were not able to be on that All-Star team. But we'll see if Sanchez gets the nod for like a guy like Chris Sale, who's currently injured and won't be throwing in the All-Star game. It's not over yet, but he should have been acknowledged by now. He should have been on this team by now. That's how I feel about it. You can let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree, and maybe you want Ranger in there as well. I'm just leaving him a little bit on the outside looking in. Coming up next, if you're looking for the Phillies to right the ship offensively, tonight may not be the night for it. That's because of what's going on with the pitching matchup. In fact, tonight might not be the game for the Philadelphia Phillies, but we'll see. We'll discuss that in Game 2 out there in San Francisco coming up next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about open phone first, though, because if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait around, let your house fill up with water, or did you pick up the phone and call the next person? Yeah, that's exactly what you did. And that's why having a reliable business line is so important. And that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. Maybe you used to juggle 2 phones just to keep business and personal calls separate. Open Phone solves that instantly. Your whole team can share one number and respond to customers like a shared inbox. No more asking who's handling this. And the AI agent that they've got at Open Phone, well, it handles after-hour calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so that you never miss a customer again. It's the only way to do it. If I'm calling your phone and your business and you're not answering, I'm going somewhere else. And you might not always be there to answer. And that's why you need Open Phone. And plus, Open Phone is offering Locked On Phillies listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OPENPHONE. Openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, well, listen to this. Open Phone, they're going to port them over at no extra charge. Take care of all of it for you. Open Phone. No missed calls, no missed customers. Go ahead and check them out at openphone.com. Game 2, Phillies and Giants. And I don't have a great feeling about this one, folks. I already told you this road trip, we're looking for 500. That's where I'm at with the Philadelphia Phillies. So they lose the series, they win the one against the Padres, they come out of it 3-3. We're good with that, okay? We will survive that. Heading into the All-Star break, just staying afloat in a tough part of the schedule. With the offense not going as well, that would be a win in my book, or at least not a loss. But tonight feels like a loss, just looking at the matchup. Robbie Ray is on the mound for the Giants, as I mentioned earlier, and he is a tough lefty with a 2.68 ERA. He struck out 117 through 107 innings this year, and he is an all-star, and rightfully so. So what's going on with the Phillies? Well, their offense is not rolling well. They don't hit lefties as well as they hit righties. So you've got a tough lefty on the mound. That doesn't exactly play into the strength of this lineup. Now, maybe, because they've seen a couple righties recently, maybe what this does is it allows guys that have not been in the slump that the left-handed hitters have been in into the game. Guys like Otto Kemp, guys like Edmundo Sosa, getting opportunities to go out there and play. Guys like Johan Rojas. Maybe you get a spark from one of those guys. Obviously, the prime candidate is Sosa, though I do think Kemp has been pretty darn good in his minimal time up here at the major league level. And you kind of lose him in the playing time debate when Bryce Harper comes back. But I could see that being maybe a spark. I just don't love the Phillies' chances against a tough lefty with the offense rolling the way it is right now. I don't love having Taijuan Walker on the mound to oppose Robbie Ray. Now, Walker's not been bad this year. I got in this big argument on air today because my guy Brendan Gunn, who was with me on the morning show, we were filling in, hosting today, called Taijuan Walker useless this year. He's not been useless. He's got a 3.64 ERA. He's 3-5 win-loss record. In 54 and a third innings, he struck out 46. So he's had some more strikeout stuff than we saw at points last year. The problem is he's given up 7 home runs in 54 and a third innings, so the long ball has hurt him a little bit. And 22 walks is not great either. But he's not this unusable, useless arm where every time he goes out there, it's a loss. Last year, he was absolutely that. And that's why I didn't want him back this year. But this year, he's shown some ability. And he's also been very willing to flip between starting, bullpen, back to starting now. So it takes a lot to be able to switch roles like that and everything. And I'm not trying to build the Cy Young case for Taijuan Walker, right? I'd much rather have Andrew Painter in this spot. But it's not an auto loss for the Phillies just because Taijuan Walker is pitching like it was last year. So I'm going to try and keep the faith, but I don't know, man. He hasn't been really stretched out recently. And how far will he go? If it's only 4 or 5 innings, does the bullpen have enough that they can go out there and hold down the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th? I don't feel great about that because you threw Ryan Kirkring last night, and he's one of your high leverage arms, and he threw a lot of pitches because he got into trouble because Phil Cuzzi couldn't call a strike. And then he's not available today, I'd imagine. So Romano, Strom, who else? Seth Johnson, I guess, maybe for 2 innings. And that's if Walker gets through 5. If it's anything shorter than that, well, then you're really in trouble. And then you've got a quick turnaround for a day game on Wednesday. So I don't like this spot for the Phillies at all. You know what that probably means? They're probably going to win tonight and win comfortably because God only knows if I know what I'm talking about. But I'll give you a little tip. With the Phillies in San Francisco and their record over the past 12 years, betting against them in San Francisco is not a bad idea for a venture. And with this matchup, I mean, you just look at it. The Giants are favored on the money line. The ESPN analytics gives the Giants a 68.4% chance to win tonight. 31.6% chance for the Phillies. That is very, very low, according to what the ESPN analytics normally shows. Now, it's not a perfect science or anything, but I'm just putting that out there to say, yeah, the Phils are they are not favored in tonight's game, and I don't really like their chances in tonight's game. And if they lose the first 2 in San Francisco, well, then you end up focusing a lot more on the day game in Game 3, which is coming up tomorrow at 3:45, and you'll turn things over to Jesus Luzardo, who's been questionable. But you face Justin Verlander, who is ancient. So I don't know. You could still win Game 3 of this series, but I don't have a great feeling about them winning the series because I don't have a great feeling about them winning tonight's game. And then if they lose the first 2, well, God only knows where the confidence level is going to be for tomorrow's game. That might sound defeatist, and you never know, anything can happen, but the Phillies have just not been putting together great at-bats, and they've not been getting clutch hits, and they've not been, when they've been finding hits, they haven't been extra base hits, really. So what in the world do? You just keep plugging away. That's all you can do. Keep trying to put together good at-bats. Like, there was a great at-bat that was, and this is part of it too. When you're not going well, things do not fall your way. That's just the way baseball works. Last night, JT Realmuto had like a 13 or 14 pitch at bat off of Camilo Doval in the 9th inning. And he ends up getting one off the end that breaks his bat and is floating out there towards what you hoped was shallow center field just over second base. And then a leaping grab is made, and the next thing you know, it's an out. And it was a hell of an at bat by JT Realmuto. And that's more of what you need to see, right? Work the count. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I'd rather take those kind of outs and tire these pitchers and maybe get a mistake every once in a while than just swinging first pitch and rolling stuff over. So maybe be more selective, maybe try and get deeper into counts. I don't know, because the swings don't seem great from the Phillies right now. So maybe hope that you get walked a little bit here or there. I mean, Robbie Ray is not the prime walk candidate. He's been pretty darn good with his control. He only has 39 over 107 in the third innings. So he won't get killed by walks, but I don't know. He's also a big strikeout guy, so you got to be careful of getting behind in the count against him. There's no good way to go about it when the offense is going this way. So the Phillies are just going to have to strap up and go get it, and we'll see if they're able to do that tonight. That's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. We'll be reacting to tonight's game tomorrow. I also want to talk a little bit about this whole plan with Andrew Painter and if he's going to be up post All-Star break. But there is a question, too, on bullpen arm or righty bat. A lot of stuff still to get into as the trade deadline it's the busy time of the baseball season. So trade deadline looming. We'll get into all of that on tomorrow's episode. But that's all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out. It's all free and easy. And I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.